right, thanks for tuning in. I know I've been out of this for quite some time. I'm going to try to put more videos out there, and I do apologize. It's just been a mixture of time and money and whatnot. But I had this little project. I figured I'd go ahead and kind of walk you guys through failures and lessons. Still hoping at some point I have better cameras and more cameras so I can do this a little bit better. All right, so where this all starts is I have this cheap Max Light. You can get them on Amazon, I think, for around 15, 16 bucks. A local grocery store, I think there's some like rebate going on or something to that extent, and I was able to pick up a good handful of these for 99 cents. So, in my case, absolutely worth it. They're just touch lamps. They have a USB 5-volt USB port on the side, so you can charge your phone. And what I was able to do is, by adding about $4 to $5 worth of material, connect it to my house. Now, in this case, I'm using, the code is based on PSP Home. I'm using Home Assistant to interact with Amazon Assistant. I'm going to say her name a few times, so just be warned. Alexa, turn on the printer lamp. Alexa, turn off the printer lamp. So, I'll walk you guys through this. So, I don't have any great video of this, so I'm going to go through and kind of show some photos. Kind of the point of this video is just to kind of give you an idea when it comes to projects like this. I don't have an engineering background and have a basis understanding as far as electronics and stuff to that extent, but still just kind of fumble my way through it. So where this light started is I wanted to be able to control this from the house. I have several set up with my printers, and I'd like to be able to turn them on and off at the same time. I have 2 other lamps, so when I say turn on printer light, it turns on all 3. All right, so a lot of this, like I said, I'm going to kind of show you photos, so I will stick this, what I'm seeing on the screen, I'll kind of stick this off to the side here so you can see it as well. So going into this, I opened it up, and there's a 5-volt USB port on the side, so I know there's 5 volts present, and now it is 5 volts coming in as well. So I started off a few things. I will admit I burned out a few of the ESP32s that I'm using. I did not realize at first that it is actually putting 16 volts out to the LEDs. These are pretty bright as well. There's actually, if I put a voltmeter on here, there's 12 volts present now. When you turn it on, it actually takes it from 12 volts up to 16 volts. So I'm not going to go through how it actually steps the 5 volts up all the way up. There's a train. But got burned out a couple chips because I didn't bother to put a voltmeter on in the first place. So the way I walked into this, I'm going to go to the photos here, is going into this, I needed a way to be able to tell the ESP32 whether or not the lamp was actually on. So if you came over and you turned it on manually, that way it knew it was on. So what I did is I did some math, online calculator, to see what type of resistors that I needed to drop the 16 volts that would be present here while the LED is on to the max 3 volts input that the ESP analog pin can handle. So doing some math there, I ended up putting 2 resistors here together to drop that voltage down. So did some code inside of ESP Home. So when the lamp turned on and the voltage spiked up, the ESP knew that the lamp was on. That part worked great. Now, from there, I needed a way to trick the touch capacitance. I completely failed at that point. I thought I had a workaround at one point. I ended up putting an LED in line, and that actually seemed to trick it. It triggered it. So when I put a voltage to the LED on the positive side, the ground side went to where the touch capacitant little wire went. It actually triggered the lamp. Now, for some reason, after the lamp was on for a bit, it wouldn't seem to trigger anymore. It wouldn't turn off. So I thought I had it working at one point. Had a couple lamps that were left on for the 3D printers. Came home, went to turn them off, and they wouldn't trigger. I knew I needed a different workaround at that point. ESP32 also has built-in touch capacitance. So what I did is I took the lead coming off the touch capacitant portion and I put it straight to the ESP home, and I set up a sensor within ESP home. So when I touched the touch sensor, it told the ESP32 to output a voltage to the LED to trigger the touch capacitance, and it turned it on. It would periodically, every half a second, measure the voltage on the LED to confirm that it was on. So, at that point, I thought I had it working. I touched it, it turned on, touched again, it turned off. It was perfect, and I updated the status within ESP Home. Like I said, the next day I came back and it didn't work. Now, at this point, I know some of the circuitry within these boards. I understand what it is, but it's too small for me to measure the traces, and I couldn't find any schematics. So I kind of fumbled through, and at that point, it's like, great, I need to go back to the drawing board. So this is the first revision I had. Once I had this working, I went ahead and cleaned it up a bit. So this is what I had. I had 2 resistors coming off, the LED feed. That went back to the ESP32. I had a wire coming off. That was the trigger. I soldered to the pad for the touch capacitance. And then I took the touch capacitance lead here, brought it back to the ESP32. So I thought I had it working, all fine and dandy. Well, like I said, I was wrong. So I had to go back to the drawing board. So here we are again. What I did is, after playing along, and I knew that somewhere on this board, I just needed to cross 2 pads to turn the LED on. I figured, okay, at this point, since I've filled with being able to consistently trigger the touch capacitant pad, I was going to find a workaround and try to eliminate the onboard touch capacitance. So I started with taking a small screwdriver, and I basically just destroyed the IC, touch capacitance IC chip on here. Tore it off. At that point, I took a pair of tweezers and I semi-carefully, now in my case, not as careful as you might be, because like I said, I picked up a good handful of these for 99 cents. So I wasn't horribly concerned with destroying it. However, I will say the onboard electronics still seem to be robust. I did at one point, even with briefly touching it, caused a little bit of smoke coming off one of the ICs that were still on there. However, the board still seemed to work, and it was great, and it hasn't had any issues since. Since then, I think I've converted 6 of these lamps, and I haven't had any issue, and I was a little irritated at that point, so I didn't film the process, so I do apologize. I actually had a whole video of me going through the first time and decided I can't use it once I filled. So what I ended up finding is on this guy, and I Googled the number and couldn't find any schematic for it, so I'm not actually sure what this guy does. I found that by taking a pair of tweezers and touching this pad to this pad, that the light turned on, and it turned on consistently. I held it on there, it turned on, took it off, turned off. So it was, a momentary, on and off switch. It wasn't momentary. I put a voltmeter on there and realized I'm getting 5 volts. So at that point, it's okay, great. I know that in this case, in order to turn this lamp on, I need a switch per se. That can handle 5 volts. Now, adding a relay to this is not something I really wanted to do, because now at that point I'm adding, a little bit more stuff into this very thin lamp, and I'm going to add cost to it. The whole point of my projects is I like to keep costs down as much as possible. I like to take something cheap and add remote control to it, and still keep it relatively cheap. So relay wasn't an option. So sitting here scratching my head, I'm sitting here thinking, okay, how would I normally trigger a relay? Well, an optocoupler came to mind. So I figured, let's go ahead and try an optocoupler. So that's what you see right here. So I have one lead right here coming off, going back to ground. I have the other one, and I do have a 4700 ohm resistor that is coming from the trigger wire to the resistor. Resistor is going to the optocoupler. So went ahead and updated my script, and it worked. So basically, when I put 3 volts coming off the ESP32 trigger, goes through the 4700 ohm resistor into the optocoupler. It triggers the optocoupler, which the optocoupler at that point crosses over this bridge. So it worked great. This lamp is actually wired up that way. So when I touch the touch capacitance right here, it tells this guy to go ahead and output 3 volts onto this pin, the trigger on the lamp. So here we are. I can come over and trigger this lamp. That's what this setup right here is. I can trigger it manually, or through USB Home, or even through any of the assistants that I have connected to my ESP Home. As far as the code, wow, I just now have to adjust to that bright light. Code is fairly simple. Most of this you can somewhat ignore. It has to do with, Wi-Fi and fallback AP and captive portal. So this right here is the main portion of it. I have ESP Home Touch activated. That's for this touchpad here. I have a switch that is outputting 3.3 volts on pin 22. That's going to the 4700 ohm resistor. And then I have the binary sensor, and that is the ESP32 Touch. I can adjust the threshold here, so it's you can kind of play with it and get it just right, so you don't get false triggers, but you don't have to sit there and find the perfect spot. And then when that is touched on press, it just simply toggles this on and off. Like I said, once again, fairly simple. And honestly, that is all it took. Now they work great. I was able to eliminate, the resistors to measure the voltage. I was able to eliminate the LED with the false electrical touch. It's fairly simple. At the end of the day, I probably spent 2-3 hours going down a path that was pointless. Now, once again, this isn't really a tutorial as far as how to do this, and if that is something you're interested in, maybe I can go through and do one and do a little more depth into it. But my whole point to this is I took something cheap and I added, smart home connectivity to it. I just played around and poked and prod and just messed with it. Once again, I fried some ESP32s. It took me destroying the touch capacitant chip on the board. The whole point about this is when it comes to stuff like this, don't go into it being overwhelmed. Just play around with it, have some fun, keep going at it, and you'll figure it out. Now, like I said, I have some other projects. I'm still hoping to get to those. Just honestly, time and money has kind of been an issue at the moment, to be honest about it. So I will get to that point. If this is something that you have any interest, once again, I don't put out as much videos at all like I would like to, but hopefully that will change at some point. Please like and subscribe. At the moment, I currently don't get anything from YouTube, so it's just balancing it with work life and personal life and available time and money. So thanks for watching. You have a wonderful day.